Greetings and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Just Teach. My name is Tamika and I'm one of the instructors on this platform. Just Teach is a podcast where we break down theological concepts to enhance your biblical and spiritual growth. Ezra 7 and 10 says, "For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord and to do it, and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments." Our effort here at Just Teach is to seek, do, and teach the Word and will of God. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and click the all notifications bell. We upload weekly lessons, and your faithful engagement is certainly needed and most appreciated. Also, be sure to visit us at www.justteachministries.com. There you'll find access to all of our lesson notes, and you can download them and follow along as we teach the lessons. And the notes are absolutely free to you, and that's just our gift to say thank you for stopping by and engaging the platform. So I'm really excited about today's lesson. We're going to be studying the Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 8 through all the way through to the end of chapter 4, and we're going to stop at chapter 5, verse 1a. So, the title of our lesson today is A Tradition of Intimacy and Love, and we're teaching out of the UMI commentary. We're in week 16, and as we go through the lesson, we have a goal, which is to discuss the beauty and wonder of love and committed relationships. So we're going to discuss the beauty and wonder of love in a committed relationship. We're going to reflect on our attitude about love and commitment and explain how to build a relationship that honors a marriage commitment. We have 3 points in today's lesson, and those points are invitation to love, love expressed, and love cherished. As we go through the book of Solomon, it gives us a godly perspective on intimacy in relationships. And I want you to keep this question at the back of your mind. How do you prioritize your most valued relationships? Our key verse in the lesson is, "Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south. Blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden, and eat his pleasant fruits." And that's Song of Solomon 4 and 16. Now, a lot of people find this book very taboo, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But I just want to point this out. This book, it actually talks about love and intimacy, but it's nothing to be ashamed of because God himself created intimacy. And in the confines of marriage, there's nothing to be ashamed of. So as we go through this lesson and as we break down the Word of God, just keep in mind that intimacy is something that God, he created and he wants for us, but he has guidelines within intimacy, which we'll discuss today. So just to give you a background, in biblical times, compatibility and romance were not necessarily essential for marriages because couples didn't meet, date, and fall in love and then marry, but rather marriage was a 4-step process that didn't consist of emotional involvement. Marriage was very transactional in ancient times. So fathers chose their sons' brides, and marriage was arranged in a contractual agreement between two families who sought alliances with each other for various reasons, such as to enhance a social, territorial, or financial position. So to seal the contract, The bridegroom's father paid a bride price to the bride's family, and the couple became betrothed to each other after their parents ratified the contract, either verbally, pre exile, or by signing a covenant, which was post exile. The year-long betrothal encompassed the groom to be preparing the home and the couple's abstinence. Now, when we think of this type of situation, Mary and Joseph come to mind. They too were betrothed to one another. So I'm sure their parents' involvement had something to do with their relationship. But just to, as we reiterated in the beginning, sex between couples was forbidden, as was sex with other individuals outside of marriage. In Deuteronomy 22, verses 13 through 21, and 23 through 24, and chapter 28, verse 2, gives some insight on that. So, after the successful completion of the betrothal, the couple fulfilled their legal and social responsibility to marry. So, wedding feasts were elaborate events that often lasted a week, providing ample opportunity for the family and friends to applaud the new alliance and celebrate the marriage consummation. Now, we are aware, given by the name, that Solomon is the author of this book. And we know Solomon to be the son of King David and Bathsheba. And we know that Solomon was also part of the lineage of Jesus and was the third king of Israel, reigning 40 years. And Israel was at peace for most of Solomon's reign. And during his reign, Solomon became renowned for his unmatched wisdom, vast wealth, and impressive temple construction project, which took all of 7 years to complete. But of all the things that Solomon obtained during his reign, his wisdom was the greatest claim to fame, and that wisdom was a gift from God. And we see that in 1 Kings 4 and 34. So some of his wisdom is actually documented in 3,000 proverbs, which are wise sayings, and more than 1,000 songs he wrote. The Songs of Solomon is referred to as Songs of Songs because it's a collection of poems that flow together and is meant to be read as a whole. So the poems reflect Solomon's wisdom and love, and it's a poem about monogamous romance and exploring the human experience of love and sexual desire. And many might find it strange that Solomon was actually writing about monogamy, considering the fact that he had a lack of self-control in having multiple wives and concubines. So the purpose of this book is to tell of the love between that of a bride and groom, and to affirm the sanctity of marriage and to see God's love for his people. The Song of Solomon is also considered a wedding song that's honoring marriage. And the most explicit statements regarding sex in the Bible can be found in this book, and the purity and sacredness of love represented in this book is necessary considering how distorted love and romance and marriage have become in our time. So, although Solomon is thought to be the author of this book because it bears his name, he doesn't have words in the book, but is only mentioned. And some assume that the main character, one of the main characters in this book, which is the male, is Solomon. But we can't really specify that it's him. But in Solomon's day, many men had already strayed from God's design for marriage, which consisted of one wife, and had taken on multiple wives. So Solomon himself had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And we see that in 1 Kings 11, verses 1 through 13. So concubines were actually considered secondary wives, and held a lower rank than women who bore the title wife. The foreign women in Solomon's life influenced his worship of foreign gods, turning his heart from the true and living God. But we see that he may have changed his mind and his heart later in life in Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. But the main voice of these poems is that of a woman referred to as beloved, and the second voice is that of a male's, whom again we don't know if it's Solomon who's the male that's characterized in this book. But the lovers in Songs of Songs are depicted in God's design for marriage with one man and one woman. So the book opens with the voice of the woman expressing her feelings for the man she loves and how she can't wait to be with him. And chapters 1 through 4 is a dialogue shifting between the woman and the man in their storyline of their intense love, desire, and attraction for one another. And once we get to chapter 4 is considered to be staged on the wedding day for this man and woman. And our first point is invitation to love. And that's going to be covering chapter 4, verses 8 through 9. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Ammana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon, from the lion's dens, from the mountains of the leopards. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. So we see here that the Song of Solomon, continues to be a text that Christians can turn to for encouragement while contemplating love and commitment. And every marriage begins with an invitation to love, which is why the relationship becomes more serious and leads to an exchange of vows. No man or woman are exactly alike, which is why one size fits all method is not something that's finding or keeping a mate, and it doesn't work. So many people are quick to go to the altar without even seeking counsel from God to ensure if the person that they're interested in is even right for them at all, or if they're even equally yoked. Inviting God into your decisions when it comes to selecting a spouse can save you from making the wrong decision. And couples who are struggling in their marriage can seek God for help when it comes to committing to biblical principles and to avoid worldly wisdom to renew their commitment to one another. So, some people throughout the centuries have interpreted this book as an allegory, which is a story or a poem or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. So they interpret this as an allegory for marriage between Christ and the church. In Ephesians 5, Paul tells us that the relationship between Christ and the church is reflected in biblical marriage, and I 1,000% agree with that. So in verse 8, the groom to be in this text issues an invitation of love to his beloved, and he waits for a response from her. So the phrase ravished my heart is used twice to describe the impact the woman has on her suitor. The word ravished is to seize or carry off by force. It also has a meaning of filling someone with intense delight or enrapture. So based on those definitions, we can assume that the man was expressing that this woman stole or captured his heart, or that she leaves him with such an intense sense of joy. So the referral to the woman as sister, that's a little weird. And to someone from our day, we might find that weird. But in the original audience to whom this was written, the meaning and context was common, and it was an expression of romantic affection in ancient times near the East. And it just simply implies that marriage, in the sense that in his mind, they were already family. So the Hebrew word translated chain of thy neck is anok, and it refers to a beaded jewel from a necklace. And since goddesses in the ancient times were frequently portrayed and portrayed in the nude, especially with just a necklace and nothing but a necklace, this may be another subtle reference to how the male character in this text sees his beloved as a goddess. So that brings us to our second point, love expressed. And that's verses 10 through 15. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse? How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices? Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garment is like the smell of Lebanon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with pleasant fruits, camphor and spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. So he's very descriptive here and very wordy. But we see here that he is describing, or he now focuses the sensory experience of his bride's love and continues to describe her endearing qualities. And by doing so, he reminds us the importance of expression of marriage and love in marriage. And he communicates his captivation with her using finely crafted metaphors that compare her attributes to the finest and the best things known in the ancient world. So that's a list of things that he listed off to describe her, starting with wine. I'm not a drinker. I don't know anything about wine or what it tastes like, but a fine wine is said to have both mood altering power and sophisticated, refined beauty. And the compassion of her love with wine could be said that her love is elegant and has an intoxicating effect on him. He also mentioned ointment. Her ointments are her perfumes. And he mentioned spices. The Hebrew word for spices is besom, and is also used in verse 14. And besom was an ingredient in the anointing oil that was used in the temple in Exodus 25 and 6, and was given to Solomon by the Queen of Sheba in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 2, 10 and 25. But besom was a valuable high-end product. By comparing her scent to the most prized fragrances of the day, the man is saying that not only does he prefer her to anyone or anything else, but she is the highest standard. So everything he lists off is a lot of products that were sold in ancient time that were very valuable and very expensive. So the fact that he's using expensive items to express or describe her attributes says a lot about how he feels about her. That brings us to honeycomb, honey and milk. So we know that honey and honeycomb were highly prized luxury items in ancient times. Even much so that when Jacob wanted to pacify the ruler of Egypt in Genesis 43 and 11, he instructed his sons to take a gift package that included honey. Milk and honey were common expressions in the Old Testament used to indicate fertility, prosperity, and an abundance of good things. And milk and honey were some of the best things in the ancient world and are also mentioned in referring to the richness of the promised land. So we also notice that he mentions Lebanon quite a few times in the text. And Lebanon is referenced a lot because it's renowned for its cedar forest. And to say that her clothes are like the smell of cedar or a cedar forest doesn't necessarily mean that she smells like cedar, but there is something ideal about the aroma of Lebanon, and her aroma is likewise very fine. It's a very fine thing. And I don't know if any of you may have had or burned any candles that smell like cedar, but it actually smells really good. And if you have any cedar hangers in your closet, you'll notice that it also smells really good and is also known to keep moths away from your clothes. So he also mentioned a garden when he was describing her attributes. And the appeal of a woman is based not only on her excellent physical features, but on her skill in self presentation, her air of nobility, and overpowering charm. Not to mention her virtue, which is also her virginity, overpowers and enhances all these charms. So she is not readily available for any who want her, or even to the lover in the point, her lover at the point in this poem. But the fact that she has saved herself for him and has waited for the right time to consummate their love intensifies his desire for her. So gardens in ancient times had more in common with our parks than what we typically think of as gardens. And although they would have contained a variety of herbs, vegetables, fruit trees, and flowering plants, they were not simply thought of as a place to grow things, but were regarded as a source of great beauty and pleasure. You may picture someone just sitting there and just taking in the beauty of the trees and the plants there. And the garden is a feast to the senses of sight, smell, and taste. So, by using the garden metaphor, the man is building anticipation for the day that his lover gives herself to him. So, fountains were another source of pleasure to the ancients and the metaphor for sexual pleasure. And the fountain satisfies the eye as well as refreshes the skin and quenches the thirst of one who partakes of the drink. And Proverbs 5:18 through 20, it describes the wife of his youth and as a fountain and exhorts him to be delighted with her breast. And a garden enclosed, the word enclosed there is used to refer to locked doors elsewhere in Old Testament. And she is shut up or sealed because no one has yet been able to enjoy the pleasures of what she has to offer. And her virginity is evidence of her moral integrity. But she recognizes that it would be a tragedy for her to throw her pearls to the swine and realizes that her sexuality is a valuable commodity, too valuable to be wasted on the wrong man or used at the wrong time. So, to add to the list of things that he described her with, pomegranate was on that list. And we know pomegranate is a known fruit and it's known for its health benefits. It protects the heart health, supports urinary health because it contains compounds that inhibit the formation of kidney stones. and it supports exercise, performance, and recovery, and promotes brain function. It is also a metaphor that the richness of the promised land of Israel mentioned in Deuteronomy 8 and 8. Camphor is also another thing he mentioned, and that is henna. And it's a shrub that bears white flowers. It is valued and used for its fragrance along with other fragrant wood. And its leaves were made into a paste, and it was applied to the skin, hair, and it created a stain when you applied it. And that stain lasted for weeks. It is still used today to make orange dye for hair, nails, fingernails, and toes. So if you've heard the term henna, what you might be thinking of is the skin art that most people in Indian culture use to make tattoo art. And henna is most popular for that, and it's also referred to as henna tattoo. Spikenard is also another item that he listed to describe his lover, also called nard, nardin, and muskroot, and it is a class of aromatic amber-colored essential oil derived from nardistach. I'm butchering that, but it's a plant. It's a plant. You can look it up, and a flowering plant in the honeysuckle family. So if you ever seen a honeysuckle, it kind of gives you an idea of what that looks like. But it's grown in the Himalayas of Nepal, China, and India. And it's used to make perfume in ancient times, and is also the very same oil that was used to anoint the head of Jesus before his crucifixion in John 12 and 3, and is also known to have calming properties. And we also see that spikenard is mentioned in Mark 14 and 3. It also mentions saffron. I've heard of saffron before. I've never had it, but I do know that it is used for cooking. And it's a type of crocus with the purple flowers native to Asia, Asia Minor, and the Eastern Mediterranean. And it produces oil with a sweet, spicy, floral scent. And it's known to improve heart health, reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, improve sleep, and protect eye health. Another item that was mentioned is calamus. It's an Aramaic reed or sweet cane, possibly imported from northern India, found in swamps near rivers, and it's also mentioned in a long history use of traditional Chinese medicine. And there are 4 types of this calamus, and they're used for gastrointestinal issues. Cinnamon is also another item, and it's a spice. We know cinnamon's very common, but it's from dried bark of various species of cinnamon trees and is referred to as aromatic bark. So it's used for smell goods, it's used for eating and cooking. Frankincense, myrrh, and aloe are also fragrant trees, and they're a tree gum along with gold. They were made in the tribute gifts given to Jesus by the Magi. And calamus, cinnamon, and myrrh and aloes are mentioned by the adulteress of Proverbs 7 and 17 as perfumes for her bed. Also, a large amount of myrrh and aloes was used by Nicodemus in the wrapping of Jesus' body in John 19 and 39. So these 3 scents are also used in oils on the skin and for aromatherapy, and also have good health benefits. Mentioning here all of these items that this man is listing off that I just described and gave definition to, these are all very expensive items, and especially saffron, that costs a lot. And he's describing her in the sense of her value with these items that he lists off. And Proverbs 10 and 22 tells us that the blessings of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow. The fact that he sees this richness in this woman's beauty and who she is says a lot. Proverbs 18 and 22 says, whosoever findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor with the Lord. So I found it quite interesting that he mentioned these items to describe her, and the fact that these items are all very expensive and considered very good and of good value and high quality in ancient times. So with all of that said, how can married and dating couples express love verbally? Well, you can meditate on your beloved's good or sweet qualities. You can extol a spouse's physical attributes. Solomon talked about the sweetness of the bride's lips. You can also consider the beauty, joy, and value that your beloved adds to your life. And sometimes the inability to express love is one or more of the following little foxes that can destroy the vine if not tended to. For example, past experiences. These can include verbal abuse, childhood sexual or physical abuse, a failed marriage, or even wrong advice. Many husbands believe that real men don't share their feelings, while some women or wives may express that girls don't let a man know how much you love him. So these types of thoughts prevent vulnerability. And no marriage or relationship can truly be healthy or successful without vulnerability. Whatever one's experience might be, couples can look to God for healing and wholeness, knowing that He designed marriage to be the place for couples to experience satisfying love and its fullness. Harsh words sometimes breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt in marriage, as evidenced by how a wife speaks to her husband and vice versa. The Apostle James warned us in James 3 and 5 that even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things, behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. So couples are reminded in Ephesians 4 and 29, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to be the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. So with that being said, people should see Christ reflected in your marriage through your words and actions towards one another. John 13 and 35 says, by all this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. So this reminded me of a situation with my husband and myself, a good one at that. We took a trip earlier this year, back in September, to Seattle. And I can't remember if it was the flight there or back, but on the flight, there was a young man that sat next to my husband. And he didn't say much. We had small talk here and there, but we didn't realize that this guy was observing us the entire time. And the entire time we were pretty much kind of entertaining ourselves, but we would chat with one another from time to time about what we were watching or just having small talk. But at some point in the conversation, the guy leaned over and asked us, were we Christians? Well, he noticed my husband was also reading, but what he observed the most, he told us, I observed the way that you are attentive to your wife and how you speak to her and how caring you are with your words, and I just knew you were a Christian. So just that alone goes to show you just how intentional God is with having the church reflected in marriage. The way a husband treats his wife is very reflective of Christ and his bride, the church. And when you're married or in any relationship, everyone should be able to see your love of Christ in the way that you love and treat others. Now, another thing mentioned here that could be a small fox is, I think I got ahead of myself here. So, another way you can avoid these small foxes is with family and friends. Now, marriages don't play out in enclosed gardens out of the presence of other people's eyes, ears, and comments. Well, while couples need trusted advisors at different seasons in their marriage, they should only rely on trusted individuals who honor their confidentiality. So these can include friends, family members, church leaders, or marriage counselors who seek the couple's best interest. Proverbs 11 and 14 says, "Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety." So I would definitely suggest, in the event that you need to have a discussion with someone about details of your marriage, make sure that that person is someone who is very dependable, someone trustworthy, someone you know that's not going to go back and tell all your business, but that is truly a man or woman of God who values marriage and wants to be a blessing in helping people in their marriage. So now we're at our third and final point: love cherished. Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow up my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. And we're at chapter 5, verse 1, where they read, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. So we see here that the words used and described here are very, very intimate, and it leaves no room for the imagination, if you ask me. But these words with the appetite for building a marriage that honors a marriage commitment, and acknowledging the following makes this an attainable goal. True love, all else. So true love surpasses all else. After the honeymoon, couples need to continually prioritize one another as they remember the why of love and the how of love. True love is satisfying. It quenches emotional and physical thirst, eliminating the need to sip from any other fountain. True love is physical. Solomon celebrated the beauty of sex within the confines of marriage. In the confines of marriage, sex is passionate, fulfilling, and it catapults a couple back to the Garden of Eden, where love was freely given and received, and where there was a vulnerability characteristic of being naked and unashamed. True love is faithful. A husband needs to know that he can trust his wife and vice versa. Infidelity is a sin, and it's a serious breach of one's trust and wedding vows. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 13, offers additional insight to the attributes of true love. So I suggest, if you're married or if you're interested in marriage, you should definitely read that. True love is a mix of sweet and bitter herbs. Only in fairy tales do couples live happily ever after without disagreements, trials, or struggles. Health concerns, financial problems, and other issues of life can impact relationships. The key is to assure that external situations strengthen and not weaken marriage commitments. The Song of Solomon is applicable for singles as well. And the analogy of the enclosed garden in the text reminds singles to reserve intimacy for marriage and to seek other ways to express love to each other. So for singles, for single women, this means keeping their garden closed. The Song of Solomon, which is told mostly from the viewpoint of the woman, includes references for us to look beyond physical attributes to a man's heart, not buying into society's ticking clock mantra. And for single men, this would mean not pressuring a woman to open up her garden, looking beyond physical attributes to a woman's heart, and expressing love in a non physical way. So, what do we do with what we learned today? Remember that God created and celebrates love, romance, and intimacy, and is not opposed to intimacy as long as it's within the confines of marriage between one man and one woman. We should view intimacy in the context of God's design. We should pursue love according to God's will. When love is transactional, it leaves people feeling empty and longing for true intimacy. And when we prioritize intimacy with God, our perspective of intimacy with others will become clear and make us more fulfilled, free, and faithful in our other relationships, and prevents us from being hurt by others. Also, couples seeking to improve their marriages can take lessons from this text. Solomon and the woman knew verbally how to bless each other. So I hope I've said something to encourage you through this text today. I hope I said something to help you understand something you may have not understood about the text. And I hope you've enjoyed the lesson overall. The Song of Solomon is a really good book. It has a lot of metaphors and a lot of descriptions that may not be fully understood. But if you dig a little deep and research everything in scriptures, it'll definitely open up your eyes to how God designed marriage and pretty much how we should treat marriage in our relationships. I hope you come back and join us next week for the next lesson. And until then, y'all be blessed.
Want to let everyone know we do provide notes with each lesson here at Just Teach Ministries. If you click the More button in the description of the video, there's a blue hyperlink under the title Lesson Notes. When you click the link, a PDF version of the notes do appear. You can download those and use them in any way that's a blessing or benefit to you. We do also house all of the notes at justteachministries.com. If you go to the website and navigate to the appropriate testament, whether old or new, and then navigate to the appropriate book. At the bottom of that page is a button for each lesson. It's got the title of the lesson along with the text. You click the button, and again, a PDF version of the notes there just for you. These are just our encouragement and our way to say thank you for being a part of the Just Teach Ministries community. Just Teach Ministries is on several media platforms. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, Podbean, and many, many others. And certainly we have audio format versions of the lessons at justteachministries.com. So wherever you like to get your media, please come out and fellowship with Just Teach Ministries. We'd love to have you a part of our community there and certainly help us spread the message of the gospel all around the world. Would you like to be a financial support to Just Teach Ministries? We are a listener-funded ministry. There are 4 ways that you can support, whether it's through the P.O. Box, CashApp, PayPal, or Super Thanks if you're on YouTube. 2 Corinthians 9 and 10 promises us, "Now he that ministereth seed to the sower, both ministers bread for your food, and multiplies your seed sown. Truly God loves a cheerful giver." We appreciate you for your support and kindness.